We start in Alabama in 1200 AD, as a bunch of native Indians play a quick game of lacrosse, and whoever loses will have to guest star on this week's episode of Reservation Dogs. Will be banished from the lands forever and ever. So the opposing blue tribe send in their Billy Big Balls player to totally smash him. But luckily, the small female red player is suddenly struck by some visions of her nudie naked ancestors, and after her hands start glowing because reasons, she magically summons some super special stamina to do a big roly-poly and totally win the game. Or some shit. After the opening titles, Maya bumps into her cousin Biscuits and tells him to go do some shopping for her already. So he goes to their granddad's store to pick up some tech stuff, whilst Grandma Chula finds out through lazy writing, aka some rando NPCs who were apparently in the background scenes at the roller disco last epi, that her long lost granddaughter Maya is back in town, and ain't even bothered to go see her yet. Which really isn't that surprising, given she's the one what told Maya's Indian daddy to sod off to NYC after her daughter died in a car crash as a result of a rival gang tampering with their brakes. Anyway, after Biscuits delivers her shopping list back to her, Maya now asks to borrow his truck, but turns out that's Granny Chula's truck, and she'd kill him if he messed up her ride. But given he's a raging cuck and seemingly scared shitless of all the women in his family, he agrees to go with her on her vague nighttime mission, and she soon pimps his phone and tells him to follow along with her tracker. And because this is a Marvel show and she's naturally stunning and brave, this one-legged deaf bird jumps backward off a small bridge and directly on top of a speeding train.
No way!
Yes way. And before you can say, what exactly is this broad superpowers again? She's jumping over train cars and evading local goons by hiding underneath the carriages and shit. Once penetrating a small tight hole with her stiff and solid tool, steady, she gets inside the carriage and opens a special container, whilst outside, Biscuit Boy is forced to go off-roading in his granny's precious truck whilst following the tracker. And before he can say, this'll end well, Maya's back outside and running across train tops again. But unfortunately, she gets her metal peg leg caught in the gears like a right Wally. And it looks like it's curtains for the number one anti-hero, who was essentially just a female henchman in the Hawkeye show, yet somehow got her own spin-off because reasons. But fortunately, she soon gets downloaded with more special visions of her ancient ancestors what love to play lacrosse and paint their chins with stupid patterns, which gives her the same glowy hand powers and which totally enable her to free herself.
Nice.
Now burdened with a crippled foot for the second time in her friggin' life, her wacky cousin drives closer to the speeding train so she can make her escape. Which she totally does, and before you can say, that's one small step for man and one giant leap for a one-legged deaf bird with a gammy leg, she crash lands in the back and smashes the rear window.
No!
The next morning, over in NYC, some local henchmen what work for Kingpin unload the trunk what Maya was messing with on the train. And turns out she's planted a homemade bomb on the bastard thing, which promptly blows a bunch of goons to Kingdom Come. Later, Maya's Uncle Henry, what works for Wilson Fisk's shipping company, meets up with his junior employees who are in a total panic. And he just can't believe it was the D9X container which just got blown up worse than that random house in Virginia a few months back. And he tells them to just keep their heads down and shut up about it already. Elsewhere, Maya asks her grandpa to fix up a busted limb. And before he can say, hang on, ain't you that girl I ain't seen for 20 years and who lost her leg over some hot chocolate back in the day? He builds her a temporary replacement, while she gets a text from her uncle saying they need to talk right fuckity now. Because turns out she blew up Fisk's armoury, and just says, I don't give a shit, bro, because they hit me, so now I'm hitting them back and stuff. Before she gets distracted by a statue of a big boobied floozy. A bronze figure depicting her ample-chested ancestors. And he says after the first Choctaw peeps got themselves crushed in a small cave because reasons, they emerged onto Earth as the first human beings. And her granny could trace her roots back to these bozos, and now their spirits totally watch over them and help them out in times of need. So don't be doing any Rudy-Nudie stuff thinking you're alone. And so before she can reconsider her side hustle and maybe shutting down her OnlyFans page for a bit, Granny Chula spots Biscuits riding about in a smashed up motor. Liberties! Knowing he's now in more trouble than an Obama family chef with no swimming skills, he tries to flog his PlayStation 4 over the local radio to raise money for repairs. But unfortunately, only a small female fireman lady picks up. And also unfortunately, she don't want no stinking Sony product from 11 years ago, and just asks what the heck's going on, bro. And after he slips up and mentions Maya's name, this Bonnie chick just can't believe her best deaf friend and also cousin is back in town and still totally ghosting her after 20 years. Elsewhere, Maya promptly gets bollocked by Uncle Henry for totally starting an unnecessary war and importing a bunch of New York crime into the sleepy backwater town. But she says she don't give a stuff about no stinking sleepy backwater town and totally just wants power because reasons. And after hilariously saying she just sounds like Fisk and presumably any kind of leftist politician these days, he just tells her to lay low and storms off. While she somehow gets a text from a long-lost cousin Bonnie, despite her presumably not having the same cell phone number from 20 years ago and she... And that's it. That's the second epi. Though my favourite part was again spotting that this production is such a shit show that it somehow needs 3 editors to cut a single 39-minute episode, 6 peeps to outline the story, and 4 of the dopey fuckers to flesh it out for a full script. But anyway, on to episode 3. We start with a black and white flashback about some ye olde Indian bird training to be an officer in the Choctaw version of the police force, and who's initially a bit shit. But after seeing a bunch of her ancestors appear in a small pool, she suddenly becomes a stunning and brave expert marksman because reasons. And after showing up her more experienced male partner and making him look a right cack, we cut to the opening titles, where Nana Chula visits her ex-hubby called Grandpa Scully, who hilariously thinks she's come over for a midday booty call. But after saying she don't want no shriveled sausage shoved up her flange, or at least not before lunch, she moans about her long-lost granddaughter being back in town and getting poor Biscuits in trouble, isn't she? But he just says you need to swallow your pride, girl, and reach out to her before you lose your granddaughter and all. So stop sitting about feeling sorry for yourself and get out of my shop. Or at least bloody put out already, you frigid bitch. Anyway, that shoe-shining bowling alley snitch gets a mysterious call in a small field, telling them to have that one-legged deaf bird ready for them to collect in a few hours. So a little later, we catch up with Maya, who was too busy being haunted by naked nudie ghosty ghouly spooks to notice that she just let her ass get kidnapped already. Now being taken prisoner by that shoe-shining bowling snitch and his pair of Rudy Floozies, Maya is soon tied up in the back room and babysat by some sort of Amy Schumer lookalike bird. Meanwhile, cousin Bonnie turns up looking for Uncle Henry, but turns out he's been kidnapped and all. So he's soon forced to try and get rid of her by giving her super secret hand signals. And luckily, she totally gets the hint and leaves him be. Unlike my stalker ex-girlfriend, who won't leave me alone no matter how many middle fingers I give her.
Bruh.
Anyway, they tie him back up and then go kidnap Bonnie anyway for shits and giggles. And then dump her in the back room beside her long-lost cousin Maya, who's totally been ghosting her for 20 years. Lol, oops. After freeing herself and then doing the same for a pissed-off relative, she tries to find a way out. But Bonnie just won't shut up about how she's been forgotten about for 2 fucking decades by someone who's meant to be her best friend for life. And before you can say, how does she remember fluent sign language so well she ain't had to use it in 20 years, Maya just says, we drifted apart, bro. So just get over it and shut up about it already. Elsewhere, Uncle Henry tries to talk some sense into that shoe-shining bowling boy snitch. But said shoe-shining bowling boy snitch really wants the bounty what Kingpin's men have out on her. So promptly goes into the back room to question his captive. But just ends up getting his phone mugged off him by his own hostage. As Maya tells Bonnie that she's going to improvise a quick plan. And promptly smacks the living daylights out of her before locking herself back in her own temporary cell again.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Kingpin's goons soon turn up to collect their boss's naughty murderer killer. But the lead henchman called Zane, who seems to have some sort of bastardised half-Welsh, half-American accent for some reason, says he needs to see the goods before deciding whether to cough up the bounty reward to the shoe-shining snitch. Whilst back in the back room, a resourceful Maya cobbles together some sort of laser gun which takes out the lights. and promptly gives phony fakey Amy Schumer a little fright. So, heading inside to investigate, she soon runs into her own hostage and gets instantly punished. And not just for inflicting her so-called Netflix comedy specials on the world. After whining on about still wanting to see the bounty bunny already, Zane says he don't really want to hand over a wad of cash to no stinking shoe-shining snitch, and so just fills him full of lead and kills him stone dead in front of Maya's poor relatives. But before he can do them in too, Maya starts blaring some Rob Zombie music around the gaff, which naturally paralyses the entire goon squad with weaponised cringe, and whilst distracted, Maya proceeds to take out a bunch of nameless thugs in the back, before smashing through the fucking walls into the main disco room, and handily channeling her ancestors' marksmanship skills from the opening flashback to start popping skulls in a small hole.
Nice.
But after one of his henchmen hilariously takes himself out with his own jacket, and no I ain't making that up, Yankee boy Welshman Zane takes control of the situation and threatens to do in her long lost cousin what she hasn't given a stuff about for 20 years anyway. But before he can finish them all, he gets a mysterious call telling them to pack up and leave. And after promising her cousin that she won't let anyone hurt her, despite them all having just been 2 seconds away from getting their brains blown out if not for a super lucky last minute plot intervention, she tells her not to call the cops and just go home already. Maya then gets bollocked by her uncle for getting them all mixed up in this super dangerous dodgy shit after starting an unnecessary war and bringing her baggy baggage to their backwater doorstep. And they then wonder who could have possibly called off the execution. And after suggesting it could have potentially possibly been that fat bloke in New York, given he was Zane and the gang's friggin' boss, she just says, nah, can't be mate, because I blew his mind in a small alley. And before he can say, my god, I hope that ain't a euphemism, she goes and picks up a sweet new gold prosthetic leg from her granddad. And after he says her granny's heart was broken when they left town 20 years ago, despite it being her that banished her dad and sent them away to the city in the first place, he tries to convince her to go visit Nanny Chula. But she just shrugs, before heading home and promptly being haunted by yet another ghostly ghouly spook, and this time in the form of that fat bloke what she killed at Christmas. Though turns out he's probably real this time, and also looking like he's wanted some sweet payback and shit. And also like he spent the past 5 months in hospital binging box sets of The Walking Dead, given he seems to be cosplaying Carl Grimes from season 6. And that's it, that's the epi. Though my favourite part was getting to relive phony fakey Amy Schumer getting some well-deserved karma after doing a hate crime by kidnapping a disabled ethnic minority lady, and also wasting 2 hours of my time by making that train wreck of a train wreck film.
Fuck you!
But anyway, that's the plot and that's your lot. Considering that bill thing, so you don't miss episodes 4 and 5 when they drop. Tell me if you like this show in the comments if you have time, and I'll see you in the next one.